The first study skill I'm going to be talking about is expert groups. I would typically use expert groups for grades 4 through 6. Expert groups is a time for the teacher to sit back and let the students be the experts of the class. The teacher will provide a variety of topics for the students to become experts on. Once the students pick a topic, they will have one note card to use front and back to display their research. Their research note card will consist of an illustration, key points, including facts, and the resource that they got their information from. The strengths of using expert groups is that it allows students to gather information from one another before a test or a quiz. Students get a thrill out of being the experts of the class while the teacher gets to sit back. If you were using expert groups in your science class and little Timmy chose to do messenger RNA, he would add his notes, thoughts and connections, and other key points and illustrations to his note card. Once he has gotten all of his information, he will be able to present it to the class, and he will be the expert. Another way you can use these is once they are presented, you can display them on an expert wall for the whole class to see. The next study skill I'm going to talk about is the strategic note-taking strategy. There is debate over whether note-taking is a beneficial way to comprehend information or a beneficial study skill. With my own personal experience, I find note-taking very beneficial when studying, but I tend to waste paper with a lack of an outline. Using this strategic note-taking paper, it allows students to easily outline and organize their notes. Note-taking is important in any grade. I would begin the strategic note-taking paper strategy within grades 4 through 6. It is important to begin organization whenever you're taking notes. Note-taking is important for all subjects. First, you will begin with your topic. And this note-taking strategy can be done within a lecture or your own reading. Within the paper, you will list things that you already know about the topic. Once the lecture or reading begins, you will list 3 to 6 key points during the reading. Next, you will list what did you learn. It is important to reflect on what you have learned so that you will know the information. Lastly, you will list new vocab terms. It is important to build on your vocabulary as you are going through a new topic. The thing that makes this note-taking study skill so great is that it can be used at any level or any subject. I would like to use this for social studies because there is a lot of key points that should be known about social studies. If you were using it for the Civil War, for instance, you would go along and you would write the topic of the Civil War. Next, you would write what you already know about the Civil War, and then you will list 3 to 6 key points that you have recently learned. After, you will reflect on what you learned through the whole topic. In the end, you will write new vocabulary terms that you learned within the topic of the Civil War. Note-taking is a study skill that students will use throughout all of their school years. Again, this is a great note-taking strategy for all learners, even learners with learning disabilities. The next study skill I'm going to be talking about is using a flowchart within your learning experience. Flowcharts can be used for any grade in any subject. I could start using a flowchart, say around the first grade, and I can use a flowchart up to high school or even college. There are many ways you can use flowcharts. Flowcharts are a great way to organize and record your information that it could also be done in a hands-on way. Flowcharts can be used for a single purpose or a whole class purpose. You could have a flowchart displayed for your class on the wall so that they can see, for instance, comparing 3-digit numbers. You could also have each student have a notebook, and they could each make their own flowchart by either cutting out or drawing and coloring their own flowchart. For instance, if I had a second grade math class and I was comparing 3-digit numbers, I could separate this in many ways. One way is I could have a chart separating tens, ones, and hundreds. Another way is I could have the less than, equal than, or greater than symbol, and I could have that in a chart, and I could also have definitions that identify each symbol. This way, students can hands-on create their own flowchart and also study for their upcoming test. One of the strengths of using a flowchart is that the students can even create it themselves. When a student creates something hands-on, it makes it stick to their brain just a little bit better. But another great thing about it is that it can be used for a whole class purpose. So the teacher can have the students create the flowchart as a whole class, and she can display it on the wall. And lastly, the last study skill I would like to introduce is the PORPE, or PORP. And there is many ways that you can introduce this study skill. It can be used for a variety of grades. Typically, it would be used in the higher grades, such as 4th through 6th, but it can also be done as a class discussion for younger grades, such as 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. It can be introduced for younger grades, such as on a whiteboard or as a class project, or it can be done individually. The way you introduce PORPE is predict, organize, rehearse, practice, and evaluate. The way you would predict is you would find the most important concepts. Then you would organize. By organizing, you would summarize the key information. When you rehearse, you would quiz yourself from your memory. So you would recite the information you had just learned. When you practice, you will answer your predicted questions. And finally, evaluating. You will assess your answers and make sure your answers are correct. I would love for this to be done in a class discussion because you can use the whiteboard, or you can even generate your own poster board and make it creative. This is a great study skill because it makes it easy to study in an organized fashion. For example, if there was a student that was needing to study for a social studies test and wanted to use PORP, say the test was over the Great Depression. She would predict the most important concepts about the Great Depression. Then she would organize by summarizing the key information. After, she would rehearse and quiz herself over what she thought was most important. Then she would practice by answering her predicted questions from her memory. And then lastly, she would evaluate and assess her answers and make sure they were correct.